All right. My last podcast was a lot of information and I went over it. And I think it was a little too dense and maybe I didn't break it down as much as I should have. Sometimes I try to get so much information in a small period of time that maybe it gets overwhelming. But guys, you have to understand after a game, the coaches, they get together and talk about the game. They go look at the tape, they come back and they talk about the game. They argue back and forth trying to figure this out. It takes them hours. And so I thought I did it. It was a good job, I thought, because I gave you a lot of information, but it could be too dense. So I want to kind of break it down to a small little grouping here and with graphics and really detail it out. A, talk about the loss of Hill, how it affects this offense, how it's going to affect the offseason and the future, and then cover, most importantly, and the greatest portion, how defenses will adjust to what we do and what we're going to be looking at, because it's going to change. So that's on the docket for today. So come check that out. So, people saw Hill walk on the cart going out, smiling, and people were like, oh, he's happy to get away from two, all kind of crazy stuff. The guy was in probably total shock, probably realizing his career's in jeopardy, everything he's done for his entire life. He's probably jacked up on tons of morphine. So I don't think you need to make a lot out of that. I don't think there was some kind of thing there. I think the guy was that was a grievous, gruesome injury. So I think we need to push that aside. He's gone for at least 15 months. That means this year and into next year. And the Dolphins are going to be strapped with that contract. And they're not going to be able to trade him. If he'd played well this year, they could have traded him and got something for it. It's horrible to talk about, but that's the game. They're not going to now. They're probably going to have to cut him at some point post or pre-June with an injury clause if they can. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's going to put us on hook for a decent amount of money, and there'll be nothing in return for him. I don't know if the guy will ever play again. So really what the key is, how does his loss affect the Dolphins? What are they going to do to compensate? But more importantly, what are defenses going to do now that he's out? And that's what I want to get into. I went over the film. I'll have film for you tomorrow, but I want to do this condensed version to kind of give you an overview. If you're really into it, dig into the stat thing I did yesterday, and you'll see a lot of the stuff that happened on offense and defense. But I want to focus on this. When you watch the game and Hill was in there, they played a ton of man, a lot of high coverage, and they blitzed a lot. And that was the right recipe for us. I don't know why they played what they played. They are the highest man coverage. They didn't blitz. They were 18th most in blitzing, but they went far above and beyond their usual blitz count, which was 27%. They bumped it up to 35%. And playing man and bringing blitz really opened a ton of stuff for us. But when Hill came out, you saw them go to more zone coverage, and we kind of struggled. And we're going to see, we really don't see a lot of man coverage. I still don't know why they did it, but we're going to see a lot of zone coverage. And what I want to show you here in the graphic, and then expand on that, take a look at here. The top is cover one. We really didn't see a lot of that. We saw mostly what was on the bottom in the blue, cover two. You can see the red circle around the safety at the top. He's the lone guy up there. And that's a very aggressive defense. But with Hill and Waddle, it put too much pressure on the deep. And teams really didn't play that unless they dropped into cover two or dropped into cover three. Below is the cover two. That's what they did mostly to make sure we didn't get those big plays. They protected the top of the routes, the top of the field. They wanted to keep everything contained. But if you look at the cover one, they can do that a lot more now. Because if you look at the top with the guy in orange, figure that Waddle is that receiver in front of him. They're going to want to double him and take him away because of his high potential for getting a deep play. But when they play this, because they're not going to be facing Hill, they can get that guy up on Waddle. They can jam him, then drop, knowing the safety's over the top, and the rest of the guys, they can cover sort of slower receivers that are not going to fear as much. And when you see that cover one, it creates a leverage towards the line of scrimmage with more players. It makes it a little harder to run, allows them to mask the blitzes more. And so it is going to be far more difficult for the Dolphins to do what they've done in the past. They're going to have to play differently. And so if you keep that graphic in mind, and you got Waddle over here with the safety at the top, and someone jamming him to slow him down, that's going to kind of slow him down and allow them to take care of the middle. They don't fear the out so much because 2 is there. And then they can bring those hot blitzes that we struggled with in preseason. We saw problems with it in week 1 and a little bit during the middle of the season. And it's going to put more emphasis with more guys in the box for us to block better. And I showed in the podcast with all the numbers, we didn't block well. Now, there's things that we can do to counter this. If they're going to start playing like that, we've got to run the football right. We can do some of the things you saw with the play action rollouts, and I'll show you tomorrow how legitimate play action and the boot rollout can leave guys open, as you maybe even Waddle can drag across, or Waller or Washington can drag across, and it's going to put more on Achane because they're going to be Hill is one thing. Achane's a little bit less, but still threatening. And so Achane being a big piece of that puzzle and getting more creative with those routes to kind of force them to play more respectful is going to be key. But it's going to demand McDaniel having the same intestinal fortitude to run that football, to get that legitimate play action, to get them biting. And when they bring a blitz, if they do, maybe they think it's a run blitz, then you come off with the play action and they've got a thinner secondary. It's going to force Tua to read better. There were some plays. I went back over the film. He didn't play a bad game, but there was some spots where he got fixated and there was other guys open. And so it is going to be a lot harder because you're going to run the football more than likely and maybe not get those big plays. And you're going to have to stick with it, which means McDaniel's going to have to be more strategic and more diligent to get maybe a 5-yard pass. You're going to have to get Tanakana involved with a Waller and a 12 personnel to kind of get these smaller plays along with them, if they can continue to block right. I showed in that podcast, those 2 guys blocked really well. Julian Hill is blocking his best and most consistent of his career. And even Tanakana did well last week. We got to see if it's against better defenses, how they do. But this is going to have to morph. We ran a lot of true pass sets, 3, 4, 5 receivers out there. We might have to do that, but it's going to put more onus on this offensive line. And you'll see in the film how bad Jonah can be at times. And that's got to be concerning, how bad Bourne can be at times. So McDaniel is going to have to change a lot. And in this situation, audibles would be fantastic to get to the line of scrimmage early. We like the motion, but if you look at the Jets, they got poor ends. They missed a linebacker. They really struggled with 2 cornerbacks. It was a very conducive environment. It's going to get a lot harder. And so we're going to get to see McDaniel without Hill. And yeah, it's going to demand more too. It's going to demand more of the offensive line. It's going to demand Waddle to be much better and consistent or big playish. But it's going to demand McDaniel to be more creative and also small ball it a little bit more in his pass game. There's a lot of things you can still do to get open without Hill, but it's going to condense the leverage. I always talk about leverage away from the top and create less space and force us to block more. And I think McDaniel, he always seems impatient to get the big plays. He wants to score, but he's going to have to be patient and bide his time and wait for that right moment when he feels that the defense is going to call a blitz and it's going to be a thin secondary and you run the play action. We're going to have to be much smarter, going to maintain that time of possession, and it will be very interesting. I think we can in a lot of ways, but the leverage loss is tremendous. It really guts out the bones of what McDaniel has done, wants to do, and feels comfortable with. So we do have Waller who offsets it, but it's not going to be the same kind of stuff with the fear that Hill caused. And you'll see in the film how it changed from with Hill and without Hill. Waddle does put it on there, but Tanakana is supposed to be the pass catch guy. Julian Hill is supposed to be the block guy. You've got Achane, you've got Washington, and you've got Westbrook, who does some good blocking. But this is going to have to change big, and defenses are definitely going to have an advantage now. They're going to have an advantage in what they call the leverage they can get away with or give up. They can be more aggressive, and I think they can even create more diversification in their coverages, which will make it harder for Tua and the receivers to work together with this read coverage system. So, can we make it happen? I think so. But this cover one will allow guys to get up and jam a little bit. And if Waddle can't get off that jam and he starts becoming really not effective, then it's going to permeate through the rest of the stuff. I do think Waller and Achane are going to be the primary components because they're going to be able to, Waller will be able to get open and at least have high point access that Tua can get to quickly. He's fast, but not super fast. But Achane is fast, and we're going to have to get that ball out quick. McDaniel got away from a lot of play actions and screens, and he was getting more to saturating the secondary with receivers. But he pulled back last week. First half, it was more what we'd seen over the season, but then he started getting more conservative with more play actions and more screens. But that's going to have to be the key. That's what we're going to have to do against some of these defenses, especially the better defenses. So I hope this has been clear. It will be a lot different from what we see on defenses and what McDaniel does. And we'll see how it plays out. McDaniel is in a hot point. Tua is in a hot point. And they've got one hand tied behind their back. But this is adversity and a chance for them to prove they can do it or not. Hope you enjoyed. Curtis saying, be well, go Fins, Curtis out. Start building your own online sports book today by getting signed up with aceperhead.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.